So I'm just now getting ready to load my beans. So this is a roast on the new Hottop. And one thing you'll notice immediately is it's significantly quieter than the old Hottop. So I've configured various buttons and stuff. One of the things that I need to do is to update the actual website collection of screen images where I actually captured all of the various configuration items for the new Hottop. So this particular roast is my first roast of some Panama Elida from Klatch in California. I was a little surprised when I was looking through my items to roast, and somehow I had purchased this coffee like 6 months ago or 5 months ago and hadn't ever roasted it the first time. So usually when I finish up the old roast, then I immediately flip over and start roasting the new one. So what I've got here in the background curve, I'm going to modify this. That's actually a roast of the 2016 version, and I've learned that the actual roast process is at least a minute faster on the new Hottop. I'm roasting a slightly larger amount, 215 grams of coffee instead of 195 grams, just because I can. And I see I always end up with this 15 minutes for the initial axes, so I'm going to go ahead and change the axes because I know the roast will be done in shall we say, 11 minutes or less. And I don't really care about seeing all that pre-drop stuff. So it's not like there's a whole lot of excitement going on, and as we go through the roast, this rate of rise curve is going to change and be funky looking. Eventually I'll see it's going to drop from way up here. This is one of the other things that's bizarre. This is the current rate of rise change in bean temperature, and this is under the old Hottop. So this one goes way higher. The roast heats up faster and gets the beans hot faster, and eventually the curve kind of sort of matches up with the old one. It's also not going to be as smooth until the end of the roast. Then you'll see that it actually does apply smoothing after I drop the beans, and it's no longer actively accumulating information. So at the moment it says drying is, well, that's weird, yeah, 258. So when I get to 280 on this particular computer and roaster, I've determined that that's equivalent to what's usually 300 for the bean temperature for everybody else. So it's going to happen in about 30 seconds. For comparison, on the old roaster, that occurred at about 5 minutes. And that's my reminder to be aware that it's going to be reducing the heat level. I'm currently at 100%. When that first event kicks in, when my bean temperature gets to 280 over here, it will drop the temperature to, drop the power level to 90%. So there it is. So I'm going to record that on my Excel printout. I actually have a printed hard copy here to keep myself engaged while I'm roasting so I don't get too distracted. So now I've got 25% fan, so there's a little bit of fan noise back there in the back. As you can see, this rate of rise curve now is starting to get close to where it was before. And that was just a random weird uptick there, which so one thing I've noticed that's kind of funky is this LCD display over here. It shows a value of 20, which kind of corresponds to the output from the front panel of a Hottop, because it's only got, 10 settings, like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, whatever. But when I'm actually driving it at is 25%, because Artisan is controlling this roaster. So that's just a difference that I'm not sure there's an easy way to make those two the same, because they really should be the same, but I'm guessing it's just showing the display value from the Hottop. So now I'm coming up to my next benchmark, which just occurred. That was a little too fast. So now I've reduced the power to 50% and bumped up the fan to 50%. So that's what I do at the end of drying. And this particular bean, once I get to first crack, I'm actually going to turn both the heat and the power off. And then it just coasts for basically 2 minutes after the start of first crack. And I'm guessing again that this is going to go pretty much similar to the roast of the previous year's coffee. This is one of those where I buy the coffee every year and it's consistently wonderful. I forgot to mention that this is one of the few coffees where if you smell the green coffee actually smells good, which is, in my mind, pretty unusual to have any green coffee that actually smells interesting. That's definitely a sign of good quality coffee based on my experience in tasting coffee and smelling the funky green coffee beans. So I'm expecting first crack about 368 based on the previous year's coffee. And we'll see. I'll just listen for it. And once I get there, then everything gets turned off. So I'm going to start decreasing the power through the variac. See, I'm at 366, and I'm starting to hear some good first crack noises. So I'll click this when I get a lively first crack going. Well, I'm going to guess that's it. So 372 for first crack. So that was a minute and 10 seconds faster than the previous roast. And now on my piece of paper over here, I'm just recording the benchmarks. So based on prior roasts, I have an idea where I normally stop, which is at 20 degrees, so it'll be 392 is what I'm shooting for. And by turning everything off, I'm trying to stretch that out to 2 minutes after the beginning of first crack, but we'll see. Now, the rate of rise here, you can see this is dropped below what I typically would have on this coffee from prior roasts. But the change in bean temperature is significantly greater. You can see how this curve is growing above the old one, so it's going to finish up a little faster. I may have to, I'm just going to have to guess a bit on this one. It's probably going to hit there at 1.5 minutes. So at 1.5 minutes, I'm still at 390. And as I said, I'm going to drop this at about 392 or so. I may just arbitrarily use 1:45 from the first crack. Well, there we go. So it has dropped, and I'll click off. And now it will just run the fan like forever. One of the things I learned the hard way is that if I pull the USB plug, it will completely shut off the roaster in the middle of, doing that exhaust thing, which I don't really want it to do. So I just typically set a timer for 4 minutes, and then I'll turn everything off by exiting out of Artisan, etc. So, based on these curves, this looks pretty much like success. I'm going to hit the A button, my auto save. I'm going to go in here, and I usually get rid of the extraneous event here at the end where it bumps the fan up to 100, because that just doesn't, whoops. You're supposed to hit the delete key when you do that. So go down to this one and delete that event. So now looks really good. And then I have hit A again to autosave it. So that was a total roast in almost 9.5 minutes. So that's a pretty quick roast, all things considered. Now I have to wait 4 days to taste the coffee and see what I think.